Hi, I'm Ben Fuda, host of PBS Wisconsin's online gardening series, Let's Grow Stuff. Welcome to this year's virtual Wisconsin Garden and Landscape Expo. I hope you'll enjoy this special educational presentation, and remember, you can leave your questions for our presenter at any time by typing them into the chat, and we'll ask them in a live Q&A at the end of the session. Also, don't forget to stick around and check out everything this virtual event has to offer. From inspiring garden tours to an interactive exhibitor mall, there's something for everyone. And thanks for joining us. Now please enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to Old-Fashioned Flower Favorites for you and the pollinators to enjoy. I'm Melinda Myers. Some of you may know me already, and if not, just a little bit about me. I'm a horticulturist, a host of Melinda's Garden Moments TV and radio segments, author, columnist, and probably most importantly, a gardener just like you. Well, we have a lot to cover with old-fashioned favorite flowers, so let's get started. Old-fashioned flowers may have inspired you to get growing, and they certainly started this business. This is Seed Savers Exchange in Decorah, Iowa, and Grandpa Ott's Morning Glory were the founder's grandfather's morning glories that she kept the seeds and kept it going for future generations. And that's what the company's all about. Now, Grandpa Ott Morning Glory is an early blooming morning glory. And if you've grown morning glories before, there's probably two things you've noticed. One, they reseed readily. And I have these growing in several gardens at my home. And every spring, I'm a little annoyed by all the seedlings I have to pull out. But when they bloom, it just looks great. So that's one issue. And even in some parts of the country, they're considered invasive, not on the invasive plant list here in Wisconsin, but something to keep in mind. The other thing that I get complaints about with morning glories is they've got lots of leaves and stems all summer long, but they don't bloom till late in the season. And so when you're selecting a variety, look for something that's an early bloomer. Grandpa Ott is one, Early Call is another, and then Heavenly Blue, look at that beautiful color, is another early blooming. So keep that in mind if you're growing morning glories. On the handout that's available on this website, I do list cultivars as well as the pollinators that like to visit these flowers. So check that out. And if you have trouble downloading it, email me at info@melindamyers.com, and I can either send you a link to the PDF or a hard copy as well. But I've got lots of links to that and additional information to help you in your garden. Now, old-fashioned flowers, you may have your favorites. Sunflowers are one of mine, and I know many others as well. This is a picture of me when I was little with my grandmother and brother, and this inspired our sunflower project we did for quite a few years. And it also inspired me to grow sunflowers with my granddaughter. This is my granddaughter a few years ago, and this was one of her first sunflowers she planted. She still remembers it and talks about growing sunflowers every year. So we have to have them in my garden every year as part of our tradition. Sunflowers are annuals. They like full sun, well-drained soil, and are even drought tolerant. An annual is a plant that you start from seed and it dies at the end of the season. Some, because we're in the north, die because of the winter. Others, that's just the end of their life cycle. These do drop seeds in the ground, the ones that birds and squirrels don't eat, and you may have some volunteers in next year's garden. And speaking of birds, birds love the seeds of sunflowers. So do the squirrels. They're quite entertaining to watch. But you'll also find pollinators on the flowers like hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies sipping the nectar as well. If you can beat any of this wildlife to the seeds, you can roast them and enjoy them as well. Or maybe you want to plant some this year in a fort or a house for the youngsters in your life. And maybe you don't have room for one of the huge mammoth sunflowers that can grow 12 feet tall with the big flower heads, but there are lots of varieties available that are great for small spaces, even containers, and great as cutting flowers. So take a look and see if you can find the color, the flower size and shape, and the height that you like. Bleeding heart's one of my favorites, and I find many other gardeners as well. Common bleeding hearts is a spring blooming perennial, and you may notice the name has changed. It's no longer Dicentra, but you'll still see it listed that way in catalogs and on websites. If you know this plant, you've probably pulled apart the flower and found the princess, the slipper, the boat, all the little stories and folklore that go along with it. I just think it's a beautiful plant that brightens up the spring garden. It's shade tolerant, it likes moist soil, and it can grow 3 feet tall. I've even had a couple of plants in my old house reach 4.5 feet in height. Now, the downside is it dies back midsummer. So you have that big vacant hole in the garden. So plan your garden accordingly. Have some other plants that block the view of that vacant space so you don't notice it. Or cut it back right after flowering, not to the ground, but just cut off those faded flowers, cut it back about halfway. That encourages new growth, and you may have leaves through the end of the season. It's a great cut flower. This may help you remember it blooms around Mother's Day. And sometimes you'll find florists or garden centers that force the plants into bloom for Valentine's Day. Kind of a fun plant, perfect for that holiday. There are white varieties available. I find they're a little less vigorous than the pink flowering types, but they're also beautiful and brighten up the shade quite well. They are sensitive to root rot, all, but especially the white variety. So make sure that the soil's moist but well drained. There is the gold heart yellow foliage plant. It really brightens up the shade with that yellow chartreuse foliage and those pink flowers. You either like this combination or don't. And the nice part about gardening, you get to choose. There is a new one called white gold out that has white flowers with the same chartreuse foliage. If you're looking for a North American native, fringe bleeding heart is another option. It blooms after the common bleeding heart, and it's much smaller, 18 inches tall when it's in bloom. It flowers later than common bleeding heart and sporadically throughout the summer. If you deadhead, you'll increase the odds of that plant flowering a little bit later into early to midsummer. The other thing is the leaves on this one persist throughout the growing season, so that's a nice addition. And give it a little bit of afternoon shade because hot afternoon sun can scorch the leaves. If you want a Wisconsin native, consider Dutchman's breeches. This is a beautiful spring ephemeral. And these are plants that bloom early, die back, and then you don't see anything until next spring. And here's a planting, a natural planting of them in Twin Lakes, Wisconsin on a hillside, and just brightened up that hillside in spring. What a beautiful sight. Dutchman's breeches. Now, a biennial is a plant that grows leaves the first year, those leaves overwinter, then it produces a flower stalk the second year, produces seed, drops those seeds if you let it, and the plant dies. And those seeds start new plants that the first year will be leaves only, the second year will bloom. And that's a biennial. And foxgloves for us act as biennials. So we want to plant them 2 years in a row so you get flowers every year. And that's one way to make them look like perennials. Now, foxglove is an old-fashioned favorite that when I wrote my first book, the garden book for Wisconsin, several gardeners said, you left out foxglove and hollyhock, some of our favorite plants. And these plants were the ones that inspired this talk because somebody who attended last year's Garden Expo said, you need to do old-fashioned favorite flowers. So here you go. I hope you're watching. Foxglove, those little flowers reminded somebody of the fingers of gloves, and that's where it got that name. Great for partial shade and moist but well-drained soils. Look at the vertical interest these plants provide. Now, you may not want marching soldiers in your garden, but picture some of these in a cluster or mass with hostas and ferns in a shaded garden. Wouldn't that be beautiful? As these flower. And again, remember to let some go to seed so that you'll keep these plants going from year to year. Now, most of these plants we're going to talk about do reseed readily, but that's important to know. So if you're a neat and tidy gardener and you tend to get out there early and weed out the plants, you may be weeding out some of these as well. So sometimes procrastination is a good thing. This is Foxy, an older variety that's still available. It's an All-America selection. And All-America selection plants are tested nationally, proven locally for performing better in our gardens, not for the producers, not for shipping, but they're either more disease resistant, better growth habit, more abundant flowers, some characteristic that makes them better than anything that's already on the market. You can see this was a winner back in 1967, but you'll still find it in catalogs today. 3 feet tall and lots of blooms. Camelot is a newer variety. Look at all those flowers on that stem. It does bloom heavy the first year. So often with biennials, the growers start them in the greenhouse early enough that they are forced into bloom for us that first year. And that's kind of nice so that we don't have to wait for those flowers. But again, you'll want to plant them 2 years in a row. Look at that large flowering stalk of blooms, just gorgeous. This is a hybrid from Ball Horticulture, Digitalis hybrid, and it's called Foxlight Rose Ivory. Now it's 20 inches tall, so it's nice and compact, great for a container, front of the border. It has beautiful bicolor flowers, this particular variety. Lots of blooms on a 20-inch tall plant. There are several in this collection. And then this is Digiplexus. This is a hybrid between Digitalis and Isoplexus, its tropical relative. And they've hybridized this. It's a sterile plant, meaning it doesn't produce seed. So what does that mean? This is an annual, truly an annual, because it's not going to reseed, so you have plants next year. But I was reading something from Mark Dwyer, who said when he grew these at Rotary Garden, he had it in bloom for 4 months. So look at this and think about those impressive flowers that you could enjoy for 4 months in the garden. Worth the investment. An annual but long blooming. Now, all Digitalis are toxic, so you want to use them carefully. That's where the heart medicine came from originally, Digitalis. Straw foxglove, Digitalis lutea, back in the mid 80s, I remember they were promoting this as the perennial foxglove for Wisconsin. And it took off a little bit, but never seemed to really gain any momentum. And I think part of the reason is when we hear perennial as gardeners, we think decades of living. And this one maybe lived a few years, but didn't really persist for decades. You can still find it, and it's beautiful because it's yellow, kind of a light yellow color, a little bit smaller flowers on a large flower stalk, and 2 to 3.5 feet tall. So it might be something to check out, and there are some local nurseries that carry it here in Wisconsin. The other old-fashioned favorite that I think a lot of us think about is hollyhocks. I always think of my grandma. She always had hollyhocks growing in her backyard. It's a biennial, just like foxglove. So the first year you get leaves, the second year you have leaves and flowers, seeds that you want to leave a few in the ground or collect those seeds, and then you can start them in the garden yourself. This plant, though, likes full sun and well-drained soils. When you see the hollyhock, for me, I think of hollyhock dolls. The blossom that's open is the skirt. You pick a bud, use a toothpick, put the head on the blossom so you have a hollyhock doll. Now, I thought maybe I was the only one that remembered, but if you check out Pinterest, you'll see lots of hollyhock dolls featured. So I think there are a lot of us that either grew up with that or were told about hollyhock dolls, so it's coming back in popularity. Might be a fun thing to do with the youngsters in your life or just you and yourself. But while I was doing a little research on hollyhocks, I found that they're edible, something I didn't know. And they recommend taking the bottom part that tends to be white off because that tends to be bitter. And I find with edible flowers, removing the reproductive parts also improves the flavor. It's something I'm going to try this year. Now, there are some varieties out there that are All-America Selection winners. Queenie Purple was voted a winner in 2004. It's a compact plant with double flowers, and you'll still find it available now. Quite impressive, just a little bit different look. And I love this one, Summer Carnival. Look at those big billowy flowers. Looks like those tissue flowers you may have made as kids. Beautiful. It's a big plant, 5 to 6 feet tall, so perfect for back of the border. Now, if you've grown hollyhocks, you probably recognize all these problems on the leaves. If you look in the lower left, you'll see that orange spots on the leaves, that's rust, a fungal disease. It's pretty common on hollyhocks. All those holes could be caused by Japanese beetles. There's a weevil that attacks a sawfly that eats holes in the leaves. Now you may go, it's not worth it. And part of the reason we like old-fashioned flowers is they're supposed to be low maintenance. So what I do is I don't treat, I grow something a little bit shorter in front to mask the leaves that are damaged, but let those flowers show through. Then in the fall, I do a good cleanup, removing any of the leaves that have dropped. And I may have some rust on the rosette of leaves that are overwintering. If there are some that are disease-free, I get rid of those that are diseased to reduce the risk for the following year. It's kind of a low-maintenance way to have beautiful hollyhocks with less effort. Another heat and drought tolerant plant that reseeds readily is amaranth. This one is Love Lies Bleeding. And often you see this one cascading down called tassel flower as well. Many amaranth have been raised because they're great seed plants that can be ground into flour. Birds like the seeds. They make great cut flowers fresh and dried. And they're very beautiful. They can range in height from 2.5 to 5 feet tall, and the weight of the flower sometimes tips them over, so you may need to stake them as well. This is an annual, as I mentioned, and it can come in green, cream, red, and white flower colors. Here you see it growing with zinnias. Elephant head is a tall one, as you can see when you compare it to the castor bean with those big, bold leaves in the background. And you can see where it gets that common name, the trunk and the head of the elephant. Again, a nice one for drying and just some bold texture in the garden. And then dreadlocks. This is one I grew in my cutting garden. I was intrigued by the name, and you can see why they called it dreadlocks. That's what it looks like. This one's a little bit shorter, only about 3 feet tall. Here's my cutting garden that summer I grew them. In the back, the orange flowers are Mexican sunflower. You see the dreadlocks amaranth in front of it. In the lower left of the frame is Queenie Lime Zinnia, an All-America selection, beautiful, colorful zinnia. Lower right, Mealy Cup Salvia, terrible name, but great for cutting fresh and dried. Behind it, some Nicotiana, we'll talk about that later. Some Blue Horizon Ageratum, and then some more dreadlocks behind it. So great for cutting, and I still have some drying in my basement waiting to find that perfect use. Well, let's move to some edible annuals. This is calendula, also called pot marigold, and it gets that common name because, well, somebody thought it looked like a marigold, and those petals were used for seasoning soups and stews that are cooked in a pot, thus pot marigold. It reseeds readily, so you plant it once, and as long as you let those seedlings develop the next year, you'll have more plants. It likes cool temperatures. So I find it really shines in the spring. In the summer, not so much, and then back in bloom in the fall. So you may want to grow it in a pot. So when it's not in bloom, move that out of the way so you don't have to look at those plants with no flowers, or surround it with some summer bloomers so that you also have flowers blooming all season long. And then those calendulas can come in and out of bloom, add to the mix, but not detract when they're not blooming. So they like full sun to part sun, and as I mentioned, cool temperatures. They are edible. This was a salad I purchased when I was working at Epcot. I was doing a talk down there, and I just stopped at one of those fast food places on the grounds, and the salad's in a plastic container, but look at how those flowers, those edible flowers, dress up the salad and make it look somewhat gourmet. Now you can get single, semi-double, and double, yellows, orange, and cream. And if you deadhead, remove all those faded flowers you see here, you'll get more blooms throughout the season. Remember, if it heat stalls, and that's what happens to flowers that are a little sensitive to high temperatures, it just sits there and doesn't bloom. Continue proper care, and then wait. When cooler temperatures return, you'll get flowers again. This is Cheers Orange, which is a semi-double in different shades of orange. And it's a little more compact. You can see growing here in the container, and a little more heat resistant. So when you're selecting your variety, consider growing those that are a little more heat tolerant so you'll get a long blooming period. These petals were also used as dye plants. So those of you looking for crafty options, you might want to try using them to dye some fabric. Another edible annual is borage, and this is one of my favorites. I love that blue, and it seems as gardeners we're always looking for a true blue flower, and this one to me is pretty true blue. The hairs on the stems and the petioles and also on the sepals of the flowers really add to its texture, and there are also some fine hairs on the leaves, giving it that light green appearance. This is often called the bee plant because bees love this, and I'd read somewhere that the nectaries refill in minutes. Now, I couldn't truth it out. I looked for several reliable sources, but bees do love it. And I know a lot of beekeepers plant this around their beehives just to support their bees. It's a pretty plant and edible. But not only are the flowers edible, the leaves are too, which I didn't know until recently. So I plan to try using a few in salads as well. You can use the flowers, remove the reproductive part. You can freeze them in ice cube trays, serve them up in sparkling water. You can sugar them and serve them them up on a dessert. You can add them to a salad. So I think growing edible flowers just adds that nice dimension to your garden. I'm not known for being an outstanding cook, but when I can have fresh vegetables from my garden, I can be a decent cook. But if I add flowers, edible flowers to the mix, I actually look a little gourmet. Cosmos bipinnatus. This cosmos is heat and drought tolerant. That's the reason I like this cosmos the best of all, because it's so easy to grow. And it's an annual, but it does reseed readily. So you'll have plenty in your garden next year, maybe more than you want, but thin them out in the spring, move them where you want them. It's great. This is a garden next to my shop. And it's gravelly, rocky soil, west facing, really hot, hard to get plants in. And so I planted cosmos a few years ago and they keep reseeding, which is great. And here they came through my limelight hydrangea. I just love the mix of texture and color that these self-seeded cosmos provided. They are tall. They naturally, the straight species is 5 feet tall, even 6 feet tall. You can see here next to those castor beans, whites, pinks, those rosy colored and lavender flowers available. Well, a tip that I got from Sally Roth, who contributes to Birds in Bloom magazine, I thought this was a great tip. She wrote an article that she'd grown leaf lettuce, was harvesting it, never cleaned it out when it got hot and went to seed. She found that the finches were feeding on the seeds. And so she thought, well, this is great, but it looks ugly. If you've ever seen leaf lettuce go to seed, I have to admit, it is a pretty ugly looking plant. So what she did the next time was she planted her leaf lettuce seeds with cosmos. So she harvested her leaf lettuce. By the time it went to seed, the cosmos was masking the view so the finches could get to those seeds, but she didn't have to look at the ugly plant. Then butterflies were visiting the cosmos. Then when they went to seed, the finches came back. So she had a beautiful edible patch in her garden, something that might be worth a try in your own backyard. You can find them in single, semi-double, and double forms. There's even a yellow called Xanthos, Xanthos. I grew it one year, a little hard to find, but it's a beautiful pale yellow. There are shorter varieties like Sonata, which makes it perfect for either the front of the border or a container like you see here. Cosmos sulphureus is the yellow and orange one that you're most familiar with as yellow. And look at that foliage. You can see it looks like a marigold instead of that nice fine dill-like leaves of Cosmos bipinnatus. Butterflies love it as well as the other. And it is a nice front of the border plant. I find it not as heat and drought tolerant as Cosmos bipinnatus. And so I like those plants that thrive on my benign neglect. A fun one to try, a little more challenging, is chocolate cosmos. I did find some seeds available. I would order early though. But look at those beautiful red, brownish red, almost black flowers. It's called chocolate cosmos because the flowers smell like chocolate. They do form a tuber. So if you in the end of the season, you could dig that up. Try saving it like you do your cannas, caladiums, and see if you have luck. If you don't, just throw it in the compost pile in spring. And if you do, you have bragging rights. 4 o'clock. And the common name gives it away. It blooms late in the afternoon, and those flowers remain open all night. They're fragrant. The plants are slightly toxic, so just be aware of that. But it's the perfect flower for moths and other nocturnal pollinators. And it's great if you work all day and you come home or don't have a chance to relax until late afternoon or evening, put these where you can enjoy the blooms. But beware that each flower only lasts one day. So in the morning, you're going to have all these faded flowers to look at. So if you can't stand that and don't have time to deadhead them every day, you might need to place them in an area where you can enjoy the blooms, but don't notice those faded flowers. Full sun will take some shade. It is an annual. And I had a neighbor when I lived in Milwaukee that told me theirs was perennial, came back every year. Well, those of you that know me know I'm a little skeptical. So I went and took a look, and sure enough, the tubers were full size at the beginning of the growing season. So this was a really sheltered location. We lived on 16th Street at the time and not too far from the lake, and a lot of brick buildings nearby. So very sheltered. Worth a try. Maybe you leave some, but they also self-seed. So that's what I thought was happening. But they were right and I was wrong. I also wanted to mention Japanese beetles. I had somebody write to me and say they heard that these plants, 4 o'clocks were toxic to Japanese beetles. So I did a little hunting and found that sure enough, that Japanese beetles do dine on them and they are toxic to the Japanese beetles. And this was from several university sources. So the next season or this year, I plan on planting some 4 o'clocks with my cannas because the Japanese beetles did a number on those cannas last summer. And I couldn't keep up with knocking them into the can of soapy water. I just kind of gave up. So this year, I'm going to try some 4 o'clocks. I'll let you know how it works. Another reseeding annual is Nigella, Love in a Mist. Wonderful plant, comes in whites, pinks, and this lavender blue. It's a free-flowering plant, and if you deadhead, it will bloom even longer. It makes a great cut flower, but remove the leaves because they tend to wilt quickly and detract from the flowers. So when you put them in your arrangement or a vase, just pull off those flowers, clip off those flowers, and enjoy the blooms. Now, you may not want to do a whole lot of deadheading because this is what happens next. When the flowers are pollinated, they form these seed pods, and you've got these beautiful seed pods in the garden, but they make great additions to dried arrangements and crafts like wreaths and things. So you may want to kind of deadhead a little bit, but let some of those seed pods develop. Nice kind of addition to the garden. Sweet William, a member of the dianthus family. It likes full sun, moist soil with good drainage, and cool summer temperatures. So again, it may kind of stall out and not bloom as robustly in the heat of the summer, but definitely as those temperatures cool, the flowers come back. And look for those that are touted as being heat resistant, anywhere from 6 inches to 20 inches tall. This is Excelsior, which grows about 15 inches tall, which makes it perfect as a cut flower. So when you're selecting the variety, think about not only heat resistance in the color, like you can see here, but also the use. If you're going to use it as cut flowers, you may want a taller variety. If you want front of the border, a tight edge, you may want to go with one of the shorter varieties. And then color. They come in a variety of colors, solid and bicolors you saw before. This is Sweet Black Cherry, perfect name. Picture this with some silver foliage plants. What a nice combination. And flowering tobacco, Nicotiana, one of my favorites, fragrant in the evening. I fell in love with this plant because it self-seeds, so I always had free seedlings and I just thin out what I didn't want. But I had some seed in right outside my kitchen window when I lived in Milwaukee. Didn't have air conditioning, and it was great because when I do the dishes at night and the window was open, oh, that fragrance just came in and it made doing dishes a lot easier. I also put pots by my front entrance or the garage, so when I'd come home from work, I was greeted with the fragrance of the Nicotiana. Hummingbirds and butterflies also love this plant, as you can see here. It's great as a cut flower as well. Here it is with heliotrope, the purple flowers in the front. And heliotrope is a wonderful fragrant plant. I always thought of it as being a relatively new plant, but found out it was really introduced in, I think it was the late 1800s. So it's been around a while, but really gaining some popularity again. It's fragrant. So you'd have the fragrance in the day from the heliotrope and the fragrance at night from the Nicotiana. They like full to part sun and moist soil. If they're exposed to really hot, dry afternoon conditions, they may wilt, but wait until the morning to water to make sure that that's not just their way of conserving moisture, but rather they need to be watered. I'd recommended these to my parents who live in Ohio, and my mom would call and say, I have to water these every day. They're always wilted. Well, they were on the south side of their house, and so in the afternoon, the plants would wilt to conserve moisture. So I had to convince her to go sit on the deck in the back until the sun set a bit and the plants perked up, so she quit overwatering them. This is a nice combination. It's not mine. I forget where I saw this, but I love this. Those Rudbeckia, the yellow, really shine through the Nicotiana. So you've got 2 layers of blooms, the light, airy texture of the Nicotiana blossoms, the bold yellow flowers of the Rudbeckia. I just love this combination. Both tend to reseed. So this kind of combination can keep coming back for years. So just a nice way to think about using these plants a little differently than maybe in the past. I mentioned they're fragrant, but when you select your variety, make sure you select one known for fragrance. Because when they did a lot of breeding for size, like Domino that's 8 inches and the species that's 5 to 6 feet tall, and sometimes they've lost some of that fragrance. So those that are fragrant, it usually says on the plant tag or the seed packet. So make sure you get one that is nice and fragrant. The Perfume series is known for their fragrance, a little bit smaller, 16 to 20 inches tall, and Deep Purple Perfume is selected as an All-America selection because of the color as well as the fragrance. Langsdorffii is an apple green flower, and you can see those smaller blossoms kind of sticking out from that main part of that container planting. That apple green really complements the yellow dahlia and the zinnias and the vinca in this pot. And then Nicotiana sylvestris, one of my favorites because it's strongly fragrant in the evening. It's big, it's 5 feet tall. And look at those bold leaves. Great back of the border, great where you could enjoy that fragrance. A friend gave me a few plants this year for my garden. I set them right outside the patio or the porch, actually, where I watched the sunset in the evening, so I could enjoy that fragrance as I enjoyed the sunset. Nicotiana sylvestris. Notice the leaves are long and tubular, a smaller flower face, so a little different shape, but still has the same hummingbird and butterfly appeal. I want to thank American Transmission Company and their Grow Smart program. We've teamed up not only for this seminar, but for promoting pollinator-friendly plants for you and I to grow in our gardens. They're doing it under their transmission lines, creating corridors of habitat and food for monarchs as they migrate through, for butterflies and birds. And they're asking all of us to join as well. On their website, the Grow Smart website, we've got some videos, free downloadable brochures. So please stop by. Their website is on the handout, and if you just do a search on Grow Smart, ATC Grow Smart, you'll get to their website as well. So I want to thank them for helping me stay in touch with all of you. And last but not least, help me grow some gardeners, whether it's the youngsters in your life, a family down the street that just started gardening, a new retiree that maybe had time. We have a lot of new gardeners, and hopefully some of you are new as well. And we need to encourage each other to keep gardening because we all know it makes us feel better, reduces stress. We can grow some of the best vegetables to create great meals for ourselves. And so if you help me grow more gardeners, we can help create a kinder and gentler world, one garden and gardener at a time. Please keep in touch. I am outnumbered by all of you, so be patient if you send questions, but check out my website. There's lots of information on there to help you along the way. And I'm tuned into social media as well, so consider following me on all of these things like Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. We do have quite a few videos as well. I want to thank you all for joining me. I hope you include a few old-fashioned favorites in your garden. Start growing some memories for yourself and your family and friends. And then stay safe and keep gardening. And I look forward to the next time we can meet in person.
Hi, I'm Ben Fuda, host of Let's Grow Stuff. Well, thank you for joining us for this year's virtual Wisconsin Garden and Landscape Expo. Well, we just finished learning about some classic garden favorites for our gardens, and Melinda is now joining us live to start answering some of the awesome questions that you were sending in during her presentation. As a reminder, you can keep asking those questions as we're chatting, either through the live stream, on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you might be watching. So with that, Melinda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always a pleasure, Ben.
Well, before we jump in, lots of questions about some of the plants you were referencing. And so we want to remind viewers that your plant list is available on the Wisconsin Garden Expo website. You do need to be logged in and registered, but remember, registration is free. So if you're watching this back at a later date, you can always go back and grab that handout and all of the names of what Melinda was covering. So with that, we'll jump into some of the other questions that we have from folks here. Let's see. So the first one we have is coming in from, Lynn is asking, she's wondering, does moonflower behave similarly to morning glories?
Yes, it does, other than blooming at a different time in the evening rather than during the day. Like morning glories, it does take a while from seed to flower, so starting it indoors is a good idea so that you can get a jump start, because often I get lots of calls, I'm sure you get this question too, Ben, is I got all these leaves and no flowers. And so starting it indoors in a peat pot, would be great, or a peat pellet. And then just even getting a month a head start, you'll find a big benefit that way. Patience is always an important tool for gardeners, unfortunately, I think.
I think it's the one tool we don't talk about a lot is it's not physical, but it's mental. Absolutely. Barb is wondering if you could explain a bit more about the toxicity of foxglove. So is it all parts of the plant? Is there a time of year that it's more toxic? Just a little more info on that.
Yeah, Foxglove digitalis is where the heart medicine comes from. And one of the best sources I found online for plant toxicity is the University of North Carolina. When they do a profile of a plant, they talk about the level of toxicity, and they talk about what parts are toxic as well. And as far as I can remember, all parts are. One of the things with gardening, and I have grandkids, and I teach them don't eat anything unless grandma tells you. And unfortunately, sometimes I have to be kind of vigilant and make sure they're listening to grandma. So don't eat it. There's always that level of toxicity too. And that's one of the things the university, I don't know if you have any more information, Ben. I'm putting you on the spot. Having a plant expert co-host is great.
Well, I will say I have 2 dogs with very curious snouts. And so if you are growing these types of things, also don't just turn your dogs loose in the backyard. If you want to grow them, either think about a physical barrier, so it could be chicken wire or a little wattle fence, or just keep an eye on them when you're out there. Don't turn them loose, and because they will be curious.
Good point. I have indoor cats. And the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, ASPCA, their website is excellent also. Doesn't have every single plant you may want to grow, but obviously your vet, and check out the ASPCA website, because that's a great starting point as well when you're thinking of cats and dogs.
Yeah, lots of great resources out there. So Lori is wondering if you can explain a little bit more about how to deadhead flowers. What should folks look for? What's sort of some rules of thumb to follow?
Deadheading is removing faded flowers, and there's different ways we deadhead. Things with spiky flowers, like let's say salvia. When you watch that flower fade, when it starts to fade, you'll see some side shoots starting to develop. And then you're going to take that first stem back to those side shoots so that second flush of bloom really can shine. Some plants, like let's say coral bells, we would take those right back to the leaves because those flowers generate from the leaf itself. Some plants, think about phlox or that sweet williams we talked about, you'll just take it back to that first set of healthy leaves. Now, some flowers tend to be self-cleaning. Think about impatiens, think about ageratum. They tend to put out new flowers with minimal or no deadheading. And so the worst that can happen is you have some time where you don't have any blooms. If you're not sure, do I deadhead or not? Kind of, as you garden more, you learn more, and it's a great way to find out. Tracy DeSabato Aust, A-U-S-T, wrote a book on the well-tended perennial garden. And if you're new, just read it with a grain of salt, meaning if you read her book, you'll think you have to be out there every day touching and tending to all your plants. But if you're running into a problem, it's a great resource. My month-by-month gardening books, I kind of take a little bit more of a casual approach. Here are things that you probably want to do to keep your garden looking its best. I do reference her book because that's that next step in gardening.
And obviously experiment. If you're not sure, have more than one plant, try it in a few different ways and see what happens.
Excellent idea. Every other plant, every other row, and take notes. Mm-hmm. When I was younger, I could remember a lot better than I can now. I like to believe it's because we're all growing more plants, but I think it's age. So take some notes on your computer, on your phone. I find my phone with the camera is excellent for recording information.
So Kim is wondering, you talked a bit about Japanese beetle control, but if you could go into a bit more detail on sort of tips and tricks and how you approach that.
Well, I'm a low maintenance person, and I try to be very eco-friendly. So I'd like to say it's just for the pollinators, which I do really try to garden for the pollinators. I feel that's one benefit I get, and it's important for all of us. I have turkeys that wander through my garden, and they eat the Japanese beetle, so that's a plus as well as the minus for having the turkeys wandering through my garden. A master gardener recently shared with me there's a new Bacillus thuringiensis, a different strain, BTG, that does control Japanese beetles, so you might want to check that out. I do hand picking. University of Minnesota found that if you get out there early and you take care of those early populations, you'll still have some, but not as many. Unfortunately, I'm not always good at that. It's like, oh, drat, I meant to do that 2 weeks ago. So I'll do some hand picking. I let the turkeys help me out. I was also, that 4 o'clocks I mentioned, I was going to try growing them. The 4 o'clocks aren't going to look beautiful because the Japanese beetles will really eat them, but they'll be dead. So, hey, that's a benefit. And then geraniums, the pelargoniums, also there's some research that shows that those are toxic as well. I've been doing quite a few webinars, and a few master gardeners and gardeners have shared some of their success with those methods. And one suggested she's going to put her 4 o'clocks between her raspberries. I thought, what a great idea. If they don't look beautiful, that's okay if it keeps those Japanese beetles off my raspberries. So I opt for non-chemical controls just because of being kind to the environment. And it's easier too that way.
And I've had good success with just a little battery-powered dustbuster. If you're squeamish about picking off, and that also makes it a bit faster, you essentially vacuum the plants every couple days and then just empty it into that bucket of soapy water, as another quick tip there for folks.
Oh, I'm going to do that. That's a great idea.
So you don't have
because I'm squeamish, but it's faster and easier.
And then they can't fly away as you're picking them off either. So Barb Barb is wondering, a lot of these classic plants, are these things that we should think about sourcing from seed, or will garden centers have these as transplants?
There's been a big trend for more and more people growing these classic traditional plants. So I think we're going to start seeing more of them. But seed catalogs always give you the greatest selection possible. And it's always fun this time of year, especially, to look through those catalogs and get ideas. I would order early because we have so many new gardeners and so many people gardening. But check that out. Seed Savers has a lot. Baker's Select Seeds. I probably have ordered from about 10 different catalogs this year, but those are some that tend to specialize in some of the more traditional old-fashioned flowers.
So Robert on Facebook is asking another sort of seed-adjacent question here. He wants to grow hollyhocks from seed that he's collected from his own plants in previous years. Are these things that he should just scatter outdoors in the fall, in the spring, or should he start them indoors?
Great question. You can do both. I always like to just have a little insurance. So break apart the pods, sprinkle them just like it would do in nature, but then maybe save a few, store them in an envelope in your refrigerator. They need consistently cool. They don't need cold treatment, but by keeping them consistently cool, you keep that viability going. And then you starting them indoors, you'll get earlier. Remember, they're biennial, so you'll get leaves the first year. Some people have jump started by starting even earlier, late December or January, to try to trick it into being that second year in bloom. And that's a lot of those transplants we buy are already second year plants, or started early so that they think it's their second year in flower for us.
So Barb is wondering, she has a very healthy Amsonia, the Arkansas Blue Star, that she'd like to.
I love that.
I love them as well. She'd like to divide, and so any tips on how to get through that root system, which is just so beefy?
I agree. When I moved from my home in Milwaukee, just west of the city, I had a plant a friend had given me, and I dug it up. It was huge. Somebody had once recommended a drywall saw that worked great. I use a linoleum knife sometimes for smaller clusters. It's a curved knife, very sharp. Some people I've heard use machetes and hatchets. I think that gets your anger out as well. I have not really mastered the two garden fork pull it apart. I don't know if I just don't have the patience for it. And I don't know if you have any suggestions either, but I divided that into quite a few plants that are still thriving in my new gardens as well.
I've had great luck with a steel spade as sort of essentially a big sharp knife, and just jump on it. And it takes a couple of hits, but it'll eventually punch through. But so Elizabeth is wondering, she has problems with rabbits and other small critters, as so many of us do. Any suggestions for, and even for things labeled resistant, they're munching. Any thoughts or suggestions?
I never give out lists of rabbit or deer resistant plants because I found anything on that list someone has had problems with. And this year with all the snow, boy, I think we're going to see even more animal damage over our winter plants that are wintering outside, obviously. So a couple things. Fencing, not always the prettiest, but a good, tight to the ground. Get some pretty stakes, and then maybe use that deer fencing that's somewhat invisible. Make sure your gate is secure. I've had people say, well, I fenced it and I still have problems. Well, they're getting in through the gate. And so that is the hardest thing because you have to get into weed. So that's one option. if you use repellent, start spraying before they start eating. Once they find there's good eats, they're going to stay in your yard instead of going elsewhere. PlantSkid is organic product that uses the smell of predators, that's labeled. There are other ones out there as well. Always read and follow the label directions. I like PlantSkid because it's rain resistant, so I don't have to put it on as often. Scare tactics, if you live in the city, I found when I lived in the city, nothing scared the rabbits. The noise, the smell of people, it was all around them. So, if you're out in the suburbs or in the country, you may or may not have luck with scare tactics. And try to use a variety of techniques because, they may get used to that scare tactic, but the repellent may kick in or the fencing, all those things, I think. And then continually evaluate where you're having success, monitor and adjust as needed.
I'll also say I've noticed plants that come from a garden center in their first year, even if they are, the salvias, the mints, the alliums that should be hypothetically more resistant. I think there's something about coming out of a greenhouse where they had perfect growing conditions. They were lush, they were tender. Once they're growing in your garden for a year, if you can get them through that first year, they might be a little less likely to nibble, but there's something about those fresh plants. They can smell them, I swear. This is my own experience, but they know. So Mary is wondering, she's concerned about her peonies. So last year she says they got a fungus. I'm betting maybe powdery mildew. She's wondering if they will come back this year.
Oh, peonies are tough. My neighbor in the city had a 100-year-old peony plant. Powdery mildew causes that white powdery substance. They also get botrytis and Phytophthora blight. Good cleanup in the fall. These are tough plants as long as they're established. New planting, you definitely want to be careful. Powdery mildew seems to be an issue in the last 15 years. I've seen more than I had prior to that. Colorado State University found horticulture oils like Summit Year-Round Spray Oil would provide up to 30 days of control if you want to spray. Again, to me, that's like peonies are low maintenance. I'm not spraying. So I try to plant them where I don't notice those powdery mildew infested leaves, clean them up in the fall. And then it seems to be very cyclical. Obviously, weather has a big influence on that.
So Jerry Ann is wondering if you have any thoughts on annuals that would tolerate black walnuts.
Morton Arboretum has a great list of black walnut tolerant plants. The Ohio State University, Purdue, I always have to refresh my memory and check. So I would say take a look at those and see that list that they provide. The other thing is there's no 100% list of plants. There's things on there that you want to grow or that aren't on there that you want to grow. Try one or two. Make some notes, see how it does for you. Some plants may be stunted, some plants may wilt and die. And a lot of it's experimental, and that's how those lists were developed. So get a good start from those lists and then add to it yourself.
So Mike is wondering, he has some LED shop lights, and he's wondering, are these okay for indoor seed starting?
I do LED grow lights, and it's energy savings, low heat, really good results. But I also had a master gardener tell me that she just bought some shop lights and had great success. We need blue and red light for plant growth and flowering. And so the grow lights tend to have a mix of both. Shop lights are done for a different reason. Often those lights are more blue, less red. And so, a grow light, you're going to get it, or a full spectrum. Give it a try. You're really just promoting growth. You can always adjust. And then keeping those lights 4 to 6 inches above the top of the seedlings on for 14 hours a day. Those are key points for getting good success starting seeds.
So Bonnie has a follow-up question on peonies. When is the best time of year to move and separate them?
Fall is always the time we hear, just as those leaves are dying back, their rhizomes with a couple of buds on a couple of eye buds or growth points. Dig them, divide them, replant them. You may not get flowers that following spring, but you should the following year. Keep those eyes about, in 2 inches below, no deeper, so that you don't bury them too deep and impede flowering. And full sun and good drainage.
Well, we're coming into our final moments here, and we still have a lot of amazing questions coming in from folks. So remind us where they can reach out to you with those questions after we're done here today.
info@melindamyers.com. And if you want to go, I know there's an upcoming lectures all day long you don't want to miss, but if you just put question from Garden Expo, I'll put you at the top of the long list of questions to answer. So info@melindamyers.com. I'm doing free webinars as well, and do my best to answer questions. And we have lots of video and audio tips to help you along the way.
Well, Melinda, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your expertise. And I want to share just one final comment from a viewer in Hamilton, Ontario. This is from Yasmin, and she says, "Thank you so much, Melinda. This has been great and so helpful." She's been delighted to attend virtually. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
And again, as a reminder to all of you watching, this is recorded. You can go back and view it online at the Garden Expo website, wigardenexpo.com/schedule, on Facebook, on YouTube, or anywhere you may be watching today. Please stay tuned because we have more Garden Expo coming up just after this.